Hi, and welcome to More Human, More Resources, the HR podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm Vicki Brown, your host and CEO of Vidamaneo Enterprises. As a serial entrepreneur, I understand that having the right expert help has been critical to my success. That's why I'm dedicated to telling you, in plain language, what's going on in the world of HR that might impact your business and what you need to do about it, with real actionable tips to help you master that list of must-dos and grow your leadership muscle. First things first, the information contained in this podcast is provided for general purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Your decision to adopt or not adopt any practice or procedure mentioned in this podcast is solely yours, and we bear no responsibility for the outcome. We urge you to always consult legal counsel and other appropriate licensed professionals. And with that, let's get into the show. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 37, Makeup Time. Have you heard of it? Well, it's a California thing, and even if you haven't heard the term, I bet you know what it is in practice. So let's say Mary has to go to the doctor on Thursday, so she's going to leave 2 hours early that day. But she doesn't want to lose the paid hours, and she doesn't want to use vacation or sick time. Oh, by the way, that's actually what they're there for in the first place. But maybe she doesn't want to use that time, and you, as her employer, are okay with that. So instead, she wants to work 2 extra hours on Tuesday so she can be paid for the time she's missing on Thursday. Now, in practice, that's makeup time. But from a regulatory viewpoint, well, it's overtime. Because Mary will be working 10 hours on Tuesday, so she'll get 2 hours of overtime for that day. And yes, I know that doesn't sound fair to the company. Well, in fact, in this case, there is a workaround. You actually are allowed to have a formal makeup time policy. The upside is if you have one in place, those extra 2 hours on Tuesday can be paid at straight time. The downside? For a legally compliant makeup time policy, you're going to have to follow some very specific guidelines. Here's what you need to know. First, Mary can't make up time outside the same work week. So that means if she's taking 2 hours off next Monday, any extra hours she works to make up that time, well, they have to happen in the same work week as next Monday. It's fine if it's before her appointment or after, but it has to be in the same work week. She can't work 2 extra hours this week to make up for 2 hours next week. Next, under no circumstances can Mary work more than 11 hours in a day. Once she gets to 11 hours, she's going to incur overtime. And the same is true for working more than 40 hours in a week. All that time would be paid as overtime as well. Now, you should require that the request and approval be in writing. Believe me, it's going to be a nightmare if you try to manage something like this with only verbal notice. And speaking of notice, you should also put some guardrails around how much notice you need. You don't want people telling you after the fact. By the way, that's a perfect example of when a form really helps. And finally, all this has to be a formalized policy. That means it's written down in your handbook and it's available to all employees. Oh, and don't forget, it's employees' choice. You can't make them use, makeup time. But of course, if they don't, then they either have to use time from their paid time off bucket, meaning sick or vacation time, or the time would be unpaid. Now, I'm not a fan of unpaid time, simply because it's so easy to go down that slippery slope. You tell somebody they can't take vacation time because they've used it all, and they come back and say, okay, well, I'll take unpaid time. Then there you are, short-staffed. So be very careful giving unpaid time off, because remember, if you do it for one, you have to make it available for all. And while we're talking about the paid time off buckets, remember that in California, sick time can be used for a variety of reasons. It's not just that the employee isn't feeling well. The sick time regulation says employees can use sick time to take care of themselves when they're sick, and yes, that would include going to see the doctor, and they can use it to take care of family members. And that has become a really broad definition. It includes foster and stepchildren, foster and step parents, grandparents and grandchildren, siblings, and has recently been extended to anyone related by affinity whose close association is equivalent to a family relationship. So that means now, when I say as an only child, I have chosen my family, California says we support that. My point is, sick time has really broad usage. And no, you can't go asking for a doctor's note as long as the person is taking sick time that they've earned. And a quick word about notice. The regulations say employees have to provide advance notice if they can. But if they can't, then they have to provide notice as soon as they're able. So that effectively puts an end to the you have to give a minimum of 2 hours notice rules that most sick leave policies had in the past. If you want more information on the California state sick leave law, I'll put a link in the show notes. But be careful. Some cities have their own sick leave laws too. For instance, Los Angeles has their own sick leave. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. So remember, there are various options. You just need to be sure you know what they are and what they might mean for your company. If you found this information helpful, please leave a review and tell a friend. Thanks for spending the time. Until next week, same time, same place.